Yeah, welcome to my home. Got coffee? And stereo, obviously mod cons like stereo in here. And heater, clock, cell phones, there's no problem with that, recharging those. And then in the kitchen area, got a few standard things like your toaster, your microwave. Fridge is a little bit different, I'll talk about that in a minute. And then we've got stove, pantry, you can typically have lights in your pantry and things like that, there's no problem with that. Just a note about the stove, this is obviously a gas stove, and the reason we have gas is because an electric stove is very inefficient. Within 3 hours of using the electric stove in this house, you'd have used up all the energy you'd carefully generated during the whole day. So we've really got to look at something more energy efficient way of doing that. And so we can either use a gas stove or something like a solid fuel cooker. And then here we could have a dishwasher with a slight modification. You could easily have one of those slotted in there underneath the bench. And then back to the refrigerator. This is a very interesting part of this kitchen, is that I started off with a standard refrigerator and I put the solar panels on my roof. And what I found was that every single ounce of energy that the solar panels generated was absorbed by the standard refrigerator. And it was like, well, this is an expensive way of doing it. We're talking about $8,000 worth of solar panels on the roof to just run a refrigerator. That means no lights, no nothing in the house, so that's just obviously uneconomical to do. So there's only really, at the time, when I did this a couple of years ago, was that you could only really either take the motor out of the back of this unit and put a different type of motor in and connect it directly across the batteries, or you looked at using gas, refrigerator and freezer. Okay? But now we've discovered that in places like Denmark, the government has made it the law that you have to make energy efficient refrigerators. And so the differences are really in this fridge. It's just simply that instead of having a standard 50mm insulation on the walls of the unit, they have 70mm insulation. And then they make sure that the motor, which is at the bottom of a fridge, they make sure that there's lots of ventilation around, so any heat that the motor generates, instead of rising up through the refrigerator and making the refrigerator work harder, it just rises up at the back and out through the sides and keeps that heat away from the inside of the refrigerator. You can have, there's obviously lights and things like that you can have in there. Now, one of the other things about this kitchen is that we've got these lights in here. Now, the lights are different in that this is a 9-watt light bulb, yet it puts out the equivalent light output of a standard 40-watt light bulb. Now this means that I can, for example, I've got 4 of them here, so I'm essentially only using 40 watts of energy, but I've actually got 160 watts of light falling on us here in the kitchen. And these are throughout the house, and in a standard house, there's no problem with having these in there. There's nothing special about having to have them in an energy efficient house. However, in my house, they make the difference of having $2,000 or $3,000 more solar panels on the roof where it's simpler to go buy $300 worth of these lights, a large number of these lights, and put them through the house and save myself a couple of $1,000s. So let's go have a look at some other things in the house, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so in the laundry here, we've got the usual appliances that we have in here, Christina. Like clothes dryer here is very careful with the usage of this unit. If it was just a solar powered house, then this would probably only be able to use in summer, which is absolutely hopeless, because most of the time you want to use a clothes dryer, of course, is in winter. However, because we've got a combination of solar and wind, the wind and the horrible weather we've got at the moment is producing lots of energy, so there's no problem with using the clothes dryer. And when you do use it, it basically eats into the battery bank. So we were talking before about having 5 days storage down there. We basically chomp in for half an hour's use of this, about 1 or 2 days worth. And other clients in very windy places, they can quite easily use this all the time. Here, we've got the washing machine, no problem with that, it runs perfectly normally. There's no variety of brands, they all work very well. And then we've got here is chest freezer. So this is like the other refrigerator unit we had, where they've done some design innovations with it, where, as you can see here very clearly, that the insulation is extremely thick on both here and on the door. They made sure there's a very good sealing on it. And also what they've done as well is in the bottom where the motor is that they made sure there's lots of ventilation through there as well. And just made it very simple yet adequate and does the job very well. Then the other thing that we've got in this room is a monitor. This is tied into the shunt in the battery room, and this could be located anywhere. I happen to have it in the laundry because everybody passes through here into the toilet on the other side of this door. And in fact, that's what this light switch is here. Is people at night time, they can flick the switch to try and find basically a novelty light switch so they can find where they're going. And so this here is called an amp-hour meter. It's just like a fuel gauge in your car. And so that what it tells you is exactly what's going on with the battery bank. So the way it works is, instead of like on a fuel gauge in your car where F is full, 0 is full in this case. So this thing slowly clocks down and clocks up. So as the wind and the sun shines, then this starts going towards 0. And as at night time, or when there's no wind or sun, it clocks downwards. So it's always constantly going up and down all the time. And so at the moment this is telling us that we're like minus 171, which is not of any concern or any alarm to us. We're basically just under